This podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. Our friends over at SeatGeek are giving us a promo code of TBA Wrestling. That is TBA Wrestling for $20 off your first purchase. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Gunners Rust Podcast, where we are positively Arsenal, and we are on the pre-eve of the Premier League starting this Friday. Arsenal v Coventry is the start of the 26-27 Premier League season. And today is, I would say, the most fun episode I do in a year. I would say usually Joe and I go against each other, but Joe is actually at work. So, and this felt like too much to send over. Whereas with the transfers, which we will do the recap on the transfers, we did predictions at the beginning of the summer. We won't be doing a review of that until the September 1st minimum, just for it to end so we know where we're at. But I've got that written on my desk to my right, but I've got a new piece of paper that will be on my desk to my right for the whole season, and it is the Premier League prediction episode. I think this is the funnest. I think it causes a lot of good conversation. I think it also, you can make yourself look really stupid in 12 months. I think my glaring admission last year was, I think I had Brentford getting relegated at the bottom. And they ended up, did they get Europe? I think they did. And did they fall out right at the last second? But either way, they had a very good season under Keith Andrews. So you can make yourself look very stupid. You can also make yourself look extremely smart with a clever pick. I don't know if I've got, looking at my sheet, because at the minute I've got all 20 teams written down. We were working that from bottom to top. And I've got Golden Boot, Golden Glove. I've got Breakout Player, Flop Team, Flop Player, and First Sacked. So they're the things I'm going to get to today. We'll work from bottom to top and then work through those kind of secondary kind of brackets. If you like our episodes, please give us a 5-star review here on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music. We're also on YouTube if you just like to have it on in the background and you use the YouTube app. Just search Gunners Rust and you'll find the latest episode. If you just, whatever one was uploaded, the most recent, that'll be the newest episode. But it is on TBA Wrestling's YouTube, which is Joe and I's YouTube channel. Joe retired this week from wrestling, but that channel will still be up and it will still host the Gunners Rust podcast. So give that a sub if you want to make sure you don't miss out on an episode. The other thing you got is the Patreon. If you click the link below, you'll go through the browser to find Patreon as I drop my pen. And you won't have any taxes. Whereas if you sign up to Patreon on the iOS app, you add a little tax and you always pay that tax every month. It's a little bit on top of the £6. Whereas if you do it through the kind of browser or Safari or whatever, it shouldn't add anything onto it. It should just be that £6 to get multiple audios a week plus graded Arsenal card in a raffle every month. But and then use the iOS app if you're on an iOS for the, to listen and all that, because it's a really good app to use. It's just the sign up part. For whatever reason, they had a little Apple tax, so don't do it. Unless you're happy to do it, then do it. Feel free if Apple need any more money. But yeah, this is today's episode. I think this will probably speak for itself. Not much has overly happened. I think just as a quick rundown, the Community Shield, a couple of days removed, I think we all still feel just as good about it. I think we feel a little more calm maybe about the Lewis Skelly situation. I think Richard Garlick's interview he did yesterday, which is rare for a sporting director like that to kind of just sit and do an interview. I don't know why. Maybe it was to clear some things up. But he talked about a couple of things, including the new Premier League financial fair play. I can't remember what they call it, but there's a new thing, a new quota you have to hit. That came in this year, so that's thrown a couple of teams off, hence why you're seeing some really odd moves from certain teams and some sales. That's happened. The UEFA one is, from what I'm hearing from James McNicholas, is the UEFA one is the harder one for us to meet the criteria. It's a little more stringent than the Premier League one. The Premier League one, we look like we are massively in the green. For anyone that knows how to do the calculations, they feel pretty confident we're in the green and we don't need to side a bell. But side a bell, side to sell. But something Richard Garlick kept saying, and it feels like a very football's gone woke, Sean Dyche, modern football term, but trading players, and they don't mean as in like one, I give you Alexis Sanchez for Mkhitaryan, it's not that. What they're talking about is trading, as in like selling, if you sell sports cards like we do at Pepcorn Sports Cards, if you're, selling Monster Energy, you're trading, and they're using that terminology again now, and I think that's really interesting. And I think what he's kind of getting at is, under the new format, it's actually like you have these ready-built squads. Let's say you've got 26, cans in front of you. If you sell one of the cans, you need to replace that can. that's what football's becoming. It's a little less what you'd see in the past when like City got money or Chelsea just buy cans, and no one really knows how, but they just keep buying it. They got 400 cans, and it's quite clear they need to get rid of a lot of the cans, but they just don't sometimes. Sometimes players just don't play for a year. It's very strange. But at Arsenal, he was kind of saying, it doesn't have to be sales to buy. We don't have to, but it's more to do with squad management. And that's true, because we talked about it the other day when we saw that squad, and that wasn't our strongest squad. We were missing 5 senior players from that squad, and it was very tough to figure out who you could drop from the bench. And I'm talking massive players like Timber and Saliba, plus maybe an Eric. I think he called him Eric, Ensri Konza. If a Konza comes in, let's say a forward comes in, that's 2 more. So that's 4 plus the other 3 that probably will be sold that didn't make it to the matchday squad. There's 7 who need to get into that squad. And I think as well, that's, you think it's 9 plus 11, it's 20 players. I think you need 26, 25, maybe 24. But let's say it's the 25 mark. You need 25 players in your squad that you feel, in an ideal world, you want 25 players that you feel like could start any game. That doesn't happen. Realistically, I think you have 17 players you'd want to start, 5 that can do, and then 3 or 4 youth players or players that you just know aren't good enough, but they're there still, and we got to work through it. And it's very rare you have that FIFA moment where you can just drop 15 dead wood and bring in 15 world-class players. But Arsenal are as close to, as I've seen any squad in the Premier League history, to that moment of, my word, like I said, if you brought in those players, imagine the 11 that started the other day, the 9 on the bench, that's 20. You had Meslier, the third choice keeper. You need a third choice keeper, and a good one at that as well, and potentially I'd say better than Kepa. But he's there. You add in Saliba and Timber, that's 23. You add in Konza, and you add in another forward, that's that 25 that we wanted to hit. That would mean that we'd be moving on Waneri, Jesus, Martinelli, and Vieira and Nelson. So 5 more players. But I would if you thought about it this way, and Waneri was alone, and you can worry about kick that can down the road. Martinelli, you bring in some money. Jesus, you bring in money. Vieira, Nelson, for example. Combined, you could be looking at 80, 90 million recoup there. Plus one of the best 25-man squads you'll ever see. The problem is, if you bring in another forward and Konza, that will take our spending again to... We're at 140-ish. That would take us to over the $250 million again, 2 years running. And I don't think you could... That then you start thinking, it's not sustainable. And that's, by the way, with us selling 5 players. Or 4 in a loan. Which is also rare to see a team selling... Especially when Jesus and Martinelli are a big part of the first team. Waneri, he was on loan last year, but, that's fine. Vieira and Nelson you get. But that 25 mark is where you need to be, and you don't, if it's a couple loans and that's fine. The only thing I'd say is I'm someone who is not in the camp of we need another centre-back. We've got a lot of defenders, and I know that, you have one injury to Ben White in the first game, and who plays right back? You go, okay, Mosquera. All right, who plays centre-back? Who could play right centre-back? All right, we're at 16-year-old Salmon. So I can see how easily penetrated, not the defence is, but how penetrated your squad can be really quick. And by the way, Salmon is not part of that 25-man squad that we're mentioning, but he is. So that's 26. Let's say Martinelli doesn't say it's 27. It's very hard when you're putting 9 players on the bench and you're using 20 of them. Even with injuries, you're going to be looking at a lot of people missing out on whole match day squads. And like I said the other day, there is a chance that we're in such a good moment that players are like, yeah, that's fine. I'll fight for my position because I want to win trophies. But there's also an element of I don't want to waste a year kind of maybe not making it, because Norgard didn't make it to a lot of match day squads. And Salmon and Dowman, you can imagine, but at this point, Dowman's at a point where I don't think we can afford to not have him in match day squads. I think next year will be a really good year as well, because I think there's a chance we get a centre back like Konza, and I think in January we might go again, and there might be a chance that we keep someone like a Martinelli until January, and then maybe January he goes and we bring in like a Krupi who will be recovered from his injury on his foot. Something like that makes sense. And I think next summer, I do think one of our 10s, in the sense of Eze or Odegaard or Moreno, might be sold. I think Gyökeres or Havertz could end up being gone. I think Madueke could end up being gone. I think someone like Ben White might be gone next year. And when you look at that, you think, we need to have something set, because, Konza replaces Ben White. in a year's time. But at the minute, it feels like stockpiling. But next year, it could feel like, okay, we're ready. If we lost to 10, where when Eri coming off a loan feels right. Krupi for Martinelli in January, let's say, is fine. But then you might lose a centre forward. You might need to go into the market for centre forward. So you don't want to also. I don't think it's, it doesn't mean, keep Jesus because you might need him next year. I think we're beyond that. That race is run. But you need that space in the squad next year. And I think next year could be a real turnover, especially if this season doesn't go as we hope. Because I think there might be all right, maybe we can't afford to have Eza coming on for the last 2 minutes of games. £60 million signing who's on probably very good wages at 28. And he's a world-class player. And I mean, if you're not trusting him until then, something's up. But for me, I would start the season, keep that powder dry. I think you do move on as many of those players that aren't Lewis Skelly. I think you put Eza out there as the backup to Solis. I think Solis is going to be very good. And I wouldn't buy another centre-back. I really just think, could not Hincapi play right centre-back? Things like that. And I know you don't want to get into all that, but by January, could we be looking at multiple people missing out on the matchday squads that are defenders if we stay fit? So, I don't know. I think there's a slight imbalance to the squad. I think if you were looking at 33%, defenders and goalies, 33% midfield, 33% attackers, I think we're probably about right on the amount of attackers. Maybe the personnel isn't correct. The midfield, I think, is a bit light, slightly, I would say. And then defenders and goalie, I think, is over. I don't think we need as many, and we're adding another. But that's just me. But Richard Garlick did mention, we don't need to do that. He kind of said that we're very happy with Lewis Skelly, but his wording was very much like, are you going to sell Lewis Skelly and where? He said, well, Lewis Skelly is in a very good moment. I think that'd be silly or something. He said something. He didn't say those words. But the feeling and the sentiment was, he's in a great moment, we're very happy with him. But when Eri, I was like, he didn't then say we're going to sell him, but he kind of gave you the kind of line that Arteta did, which was like short-term, medium-term, long-term for the player, and can we guarantee those minutes? And I think it's true. When Eri has said to Arsenal, I do not want to play right wing, because if he did, I don't think we would have bought Madueke. He said, I'm going to prove myself in the middle, and then we go and buy Eza. So he has been definitely clogged up. I just think he's 19. I think a year at a Villa, because I don't think he should be sent to Dortmund or a Bilbao or two random teams, but I think keep him in the league. I don't want to play him. I'd hate to see that. But someone like Villa who could play with a 10 and, all of a sudden he does score 10 goals and 5 assists. When he comes back, it feels like you are buying a Rodgers or, £100 million player. And all of a sudden when you move on Eza next year or Odegaard, you feel like you've replaced it without spending and you've only recouped money from Eza or Odegaard. So that's the way I would go. But the Garlic interviews is worth watching. It's not long, but feel free to go search it out on X or wherever you kind of find your information. But it was interesting, but I do feel a lot more calm on the Lewis Skelly situation. But hey, every 3 days, who knows? So Premier League predictions. I just thought I'd do a little roundup there of Arsenal stuff, a little bit of transfer news. I know people are probably sick of transfers at this point. But here we are. So Premier League season. Post-World Cup notoriously either gives you some shocks or some bizarre kind of, especially games in the early stages or maybe even the late stages when, players right now aren't necessarily in the form. Like we've seen, Saka and Rice might not start our game against Coventry. I don't think there's a season that isn't a World Cup season that those two players do not start for a team because they are world class. But in a World Cup year, you've got to kind of get through a couple of weeks and then get people back. And it's it's all about accumulating points. Those first 5-6 games, if you can win 5 and draw 1, you're in a massive position. If you just avoid a loss, I think you do really well because I think everyone's in the same boat. We're trying to get our players back. We're trying to get them fit. And then what happens is late on in the season, those players like a Rice and that, who might all of a sudden, in 3 games' time, he's starting. We're going, God, he looks fresh. We thought he was knackered. That will come back to get him in Feb, March, which is horrible because that's when we want to be fighting for Champions Leagues and that. But this is why you see Leicester's and teams like that on Euro years or World Cup years winning the league, or Chelsea or someone different. Also, we added a little bit of fun of no one in the last 15 years, only City in 2019 have won the league after winning the Community Shield, so that changes it. Because I think everyone's sentiment is very similar. There's a lot of teams in transition, but there's one team that are not in transition at all. If everyone's trying to get better, there's one team. If everyone's got weaknesses, there's one clear team that has a lot less weakness than everyone else, and We know who that is because you're here on Gunners Rest. But we're going to start from reverse order. This is the relegation battle. So right at the bottom, I'm going to go Hull. 20th position, Hull. I think of the promoted teams, they were caught up in the whole Southampton filming people behind trees, and they kind of by hook or by crook they're in there. Then they weren't. They're 100% deserving. I just think they're the weakest. And when you look at Coventry and Ipswich, they've both spent more money than Manchester United at this point. So very similar to what Sunderland did last year when they spent 113 million. I think I saw Ipswich at 109 million, Coventry at 90, 95. They're going for it. Lampard, I think I honestly believe he might just be a championship manager that could end up doing what he's doing right now. He reminds me a little bit, ironically, I think it's his uncle or something, Harry Redknapp. He's got element of he'll be Coventry manager this year. He end up sacked or he'll stay. Next year he'll get like a half decent job, slightly up from this, like a Fulham. He'll kind of go down with them. He'll destroy the championship, come back up with them, get sacked, move to another team, go a year, 6 months without a team. So he goes to Wrexham, then come up with him. Then he gets relegated with them, and then he goes somewhere else. I just think he's going to be like the manager equivalent of Nigel Quasi. I think he could be one of them. And I don't think it's because he's a bad manager. I think he's just, there's a level, or maybe even like a man management of it all, of like, he knows how to get that type of player in that type of situation up for a fight. So when you look at Coventry and Ipswich's buying, and again, money doesn't solve things. Doesn't always. Sunderland did it very well. They recruited well, but I don't think Ipswich or Coventry have bought a player at the level of what Sunderland bought with Xhaka, personally, or Brobbery. I mean, they're high-level players. They were very smart with it. But they went all in, and they just said, hey, there's a different level here in the Premier League. We have to go. And I think Hull, of the 3 promoted teams, did at least. And I don't like saying that in the sense that it's like, oh yeah, they didn't spend money, they got to go down. I don't want it because like the Super League, but I just think they're also the worst team in the league. Again, this is the benefit of these podcasts is I could like an idiot when they come 16th and they say they're safe, comfortably safe. They could also, go, I don't know, they could do what Sunderland did and get into Europe and all this kind of stuff. I don't know, but I really feel strongly that they might be the worst team for me. And that's 20th. In 19th is the other team that I actually genuinely considered putting bottom. And I think this is one of my hotter takes in this 20. And you're in a similar boat. But Crystal Palace is the team I've got in 19 going down, second from bottom. And I actually feel that these two teams will be similar to last year, away from the rest of them. I think the next 2-3 spots might fight over that last spot. I actually think these two will be quite far and beyond. I don't think they're going to break the Derby record, but I think they might be gone, not by Christmas, but you similar to what Wolves felt like last year. Just they're not in a good position. And the reason being with Palace is I think they've, if a team could have an XG, they've massively overhit their XG. They won the FA Cup, the Community Shield, the Conference League in a space of 12 months. They managed to do that in a 3-year spell where they brought in probably their generation. They also moved around a lot of managers in that time. But they moved on a generational player like Elise. They moved on a general. They brought in a generational manager who's brought them 3 trophies, more than anyone else in their history, comfortably, in Oliver Glasner. And I think his removal and his kind of acceptance to leave, you kind of thought, he's probably going to a big, big club here. And I don't want to be disparaging to Nottingham Forest, but another relegation-ish type battle, or similar, that kind of 14th area in the league. A rival, and he was so set on it leaving. And you think, God, that team's in Europe, that team's not. That team's just won trophies, that team's not. You've got your team and set up the way you want them, that team's not. They've got a bizarre owner that can really cause problems. And Glasner, of all people, wants to go there. And this is a guy that butts heads with owners. And that could go one or two ways over there. But for me, that was the writing on the wall. I think he saw what was coming. And I think he knew that I'm never going to go out while on top. And that him leaving, I think, was the biggest signal that maybe the club hasn't got the biggest ambitions. And we know with Palace, they're a bit of a selling club, and sometimes they accept certain things that maybe the fans wouldn't want to hear. If they were privy or a fly on the wall in meetings, I think a lot of Palace fans wouldn't like what they hear, because I think sometimes it's about just be safe. We're going to sell you a few players. Could you make do? It's those kind of conversations. It's not where it's Marinakis, Mr. Marinakis. I think he goes there and goes, I've got Morgan Gibbs-White, I've got Chris Wood, I've got Igor Jesus, I've got these players. He's got purse strings. This is a club that's won the Champions League. They're a giant club, and that's why I didn't want to be disparaging a minute ago. They're a giant club. They're a bigger club than Crystal Palace, and also he can see it as potentially a club that have underachieved for the last couple of years. They had that very good year, and then they've kind of dropped back off into that kind of relegation area. He might see it as, well, I've made a bit of a history there. I'm going to bring a little history here. And he might like the squads, but he also, I think he's heard what the owners have said, and one owner's saying, could you get through another year? Could you get us something? Could you do something? And the other one going, we need to get this team back in the Champions League to win Champions Leagues. That's where I want to be. And he might like that. But when you do look at Palace, in the last 3 years, Elise gone, Eza gone, Gehi gone, the generational manager gone. They've got a couple assets here: Wharton, Sarr, Mateta, Lacroix gone to Chelsea. Munoz is another huge asset, and there's 4 players there that at the minute, Wharton's being bounded about for Man United, but it's gone a bit quiet. But Wharton goes. Mateta was going to go last year. It was just an injury that stopped him, so he's assuming to go. Also, he's on the back 9 of his career where he's going to start slowing down on these goals. Sarr is an unbelievable player. Munoz, both of those players, if you talk about massive profits, all 4 of those players should bring in massive profits. The problem is, I think the owner will go, ooh, do you know what? 2, maybe get 1 done now. I'm Wharton for 100 million to Man United, and then I'll look to January. Mateta goes to Inter Milan for 20. Next summer, Sarr and Munoz for 80 million apiece. But he's not recovering these players with better players. I mean, they kind of created Elise. They went and found Eza. Mateta wasn't being talked about until he went there. Sarr the same. So they're very good, but they don't feel in the way that Brighton and Brentford do it. They feel like it's almost like hooker by crook. And it feels like sometimes, the gaslight was on 2 years ago, but they somehow got to the restaurant. Then they got back in the car and they went, I'm not going to fill up. I'm going to go 30 miles down the road and get to another restaurant. And they can't make it. They made it to another restaurant, losing passengers along the way, more fuel. And they've gone for another restaurant. And I think it's like, well, at some point you're going to have to refuel, And I don't think they have. And I think this might be the year where it kind of goes, yeah, all right, we went too far. And I mean, they're going to make a lot of money when if they go down, they do keep those 4 players now. Next year, they're going to bring in 400 million, potentially 300 million. But the transfer window is still open, and I do worry for a couple of those. I worry about that team generally. I think, like I said, you lose Wharton or you lose, because they've got Strand Larson and Eddie Nketiah to replace Mateta, and some would say that they're better players, really, like long term maybe. But I don't know. Sarr is there. After Zaha, there was Eza, there was Elise, there's Sarr. Who's that next one? And I know they've got a couple nice players there, but I just worry about that. I worry about them. I think Glasner was the reason they kind of stuck in there last year. And they by the way, nearly got relegated while winning the Conference League. So I think them. The next one was a toss-up, I'm going to be honest, between the 2 promoted teams. You got first and second here. And I've gone with second. I've gone with Ipswich 18th. I think they did very well to get up. I think they're a very good side. I think they're recently in the Premier League. But I just think with Coventry in their kind of attack, and again, it doesn't always translate into the Premier League. But when you look at what Coventry were doing week in, week out last year, and they were a bit random. They're a bit Wrexham, but better. They'll be in shootouts, and sometimes they'll win 5-0, sometimes they can't get near the goal. They're a very odd kind of team. But like I said earlier, I think it's just one of those Frank Lampard. They just got a bit more about him. I don't think there's actually like a technical way of saying it. I think there's got a bit more about him, personally. So I'm going to go with Ipswich, 3rd from bottom. But I think it's going to be tight. I do think it's going to be, I don't know, in that area. And they've spent over 100 million. They're now looking to sign in on a Stoke player, I believe. I think Hurst closing on... Oh, no, Hurst is looking to leave Ipswich. I'm just looking at some headlines. They're going to take on 2 Ipswich players, but, Ipswich are trying to buy Palacios, I believe, from Leverkusen. I mean, that feels more like that kind of Sunderland signing. And I think they're looking at Julio Enciso, I believe, and Quintara, I believe. I don't know if these will get done. Again, if they get them done, again, this can look a bit silly in retrospect. But I feel like, when Blackpool came up, and I think they ultimately went down, there's a certain team that always have like a vibe. I think a vibe that you go, they're a bit of fun, aren't they? We enjoy that. And I think Coventry are this year's version. I think Ipswich might be smarter with their signings. And I'm already regretting this, but I'm going to go Ipswich, which, as you now know, 17th, just outside the relegation. I've got Coventry. This next team in 16th, I actually think are deep in this battle with Ipswich and Coventry, and it's Fulham. I think with Fulham, I've just opened up my email by accident, so I just wanted to find their first game up. But with Fulham, I think they've just they've been stagnant, and they do this a lot. I feel like in past transfer windows, you go, well, they haven't done anything. They haven't sold, they haven't bought. They've lost Jimenez, but as world-class as he is, that's a fully understandable situation to get yourself in and go, yeah, let's move him on. I mean, he moved on to Wolves. He's not in the league. It's not a bad move in any way. Fulham start with Chelsea at home. Arbeloa, the new manager. It's that I don't know. It's so tough when I started to get this kind of between 12th and 16th. It's so hard. I just think when I look at the rest of the teams, that's the team I can imagine just not quite picking enough points. And this is Oscar Bob. This is Smith Rowe, Kevin. Is Munoz still up front? I assume Munoz is still up front. I tell you what's so interesting is when you go for a World Cup, sometimes you just completely forget what is going on here then. What's going on. Fulham, I know that in the last one there was a little bit of chaos at the end of the game in the last friendly against Malaga, and it was 2-2. Just want to see the team to see kind of an idea of who they're starting with. Maybe I've got this wrong, but there's some really good players in there, but I think every team has good players. They had Leno, Castagna, Anderson, Bassi, Sessegnon. Robinson came on. At one point, Tete came on. Berg started with Reed coming in, Iwobi. Smith Rowe. King came on for Smith Rowe. Bob. Gonzalez, Munoz came on. Kevin and Palacios. So it's not, it's not a bad team. So it's so tough to pick who's in that gap. And they're a team I genuinely believe could come 16th, could come bottom 3, or they could come 8th. If they can put it together, they seem to be a very consistent team. But I just think with Marco Silva leaving, that transition, again, this is a huge, maybe it's a transitional season for the league, but every team feels like they're in transition. The 3 teams coming up are in transition to learning about the Premier League. Crystal Palace, new manager, less of the quality players they had last year. Transition. Then you look at the next part, and it's the next team on my list at 15th. And it is Nottingham Forest. And this is Glasner's Nottingham Forest. Under Marinakis, as much as I don't know if they've improved, I don't think they'll ever hit the heights with that current squad of what they were 2 years ago, was it, when they were in that Champions League spot area. I think they're always going to be kind of fighting in this kind of bottom third, I think. And I don't think in the transfer window they've done anything particular, but I think Glasner is a huge signing. So I think they'll be 100% safe. They could anywhere be between 15th and 11th. If it goes well, 11th, 15th if it goes bad. I don't think they're in relegation battle in any way. I just think they've stayed still a little bit. They moved on, I've struggled with the name, Taiwo Awoni, the forward, that hurt himself. So it was a nice little farewell, actually. He's gone to Coventry, which, again, is a really good signing for Coventry. Chris Wood's now the number 9 there. I just think they got one foot in let's be a European team and one foot in let's not get relegated. And I don't want to be disparaging again to Chris Wood. I think he scores a lot of goals, but I just think sometimes they're stuck in like he's our main man. It's like I don't think that guy should be your main man. I think they should be looking at someone like Gabriel Jesus and making him their guy and paying him the money and going get us into the top half. Add with Gibbs White, go get Wharton. Sign a player like Wharton, and let everyone know because again they've got such good pull in the sense that they've won a Champions League. Nottingham's a great place. It's got history. It's when you wear that shirt, you think of Roy Keane and players like that. They've got that allure that I think you can get someone to kind of jump on board with the idea of it. So I think they should be doing better than they are. And another team that are doing that, they're in my 4-team spot. Next up is Newcastle. Newcastle, I must admit, I do not know anything about the manager. Some people say he's a very good manager. I know he was last management was in, is it Matthias Jessel? He last managed in Saudi. I don't know. I really like his press conferences. He's got that bit of like bite and a bit of let's have an argument. When people are just kind of saying statements, he's like, where's the question? And he kind of gets antsy. And I think that stuff's really fun. But their preseason has been an absolute nightmare. I think the timing of Howe leaving was the worst case scenario. I do think similar to Palace, in the last 2 years, they've offloaded probably their best forward since Shearer and Isaac. They've offloaded Gordon, who was one of their record signings, if not the record signing. They moved on to one of them, to Voltemade, who they're now looking to move on. In midfield, they've moved on. I'd say in the league, people kind of saw that midfield as one of the most physical, most dangerous double pivots in Tonali and Bruno, and they've made 175 million, but they've moved them both on in the same window. They're at a place where they've got Pope still in goal, Shah, Byrne, usual characters, mixed in with they're bringing in players that maybe aren't Premier League tested. They're relying on Barnes and Elanga, and I think that Barnes and Elanga are really good players. Voltemar's a very good player. Wissa's a very good player. But it doesn't scream, let's get back into Europe. It screams, we're going to be steady. And I don't think, some people are saying they might get relegated now, and I do think there's always a chance. Premier League's so competitive. And when you lose that many good players in such a short amount of time and don't really replace them, they're looking today, I think it's at Nico Gonzalez from Man City. I think that'd be a really smart signing. But they seem to be failing on every time they try and get someone over the line. They tried to get Højbjerg. They couldn't get over the line. I don't think that was helpful, that signing. But they got to really find something, get a bit smart. And I think it's because there's no lure. I think a lot of players see it and go, yeah, richest club in the world, but they're massively failing. I wanted to play with Bruno, he's gone. I wanted to play with Tonali, he's gone. I wanted to play with Isaac, he's gone. I wanted to play with Gordon, he's gone. When you look at the places these guys are going, I mean, Tottenham, Arsenal, Barcelona, Liverpool, they're going up. It's a good sign that these guys are really good, but it's also a sign that you're selling them at the right time, but also a sign that you're not going to compete when you keep selling the teams around you. This is the teams that Newcastle should be competing with, your best players. So I think they'll struggle. It could be a very long season for Newcastle, and it could go one of two ways. That manager could be sacked in October. They could be dead bottom and really trying to get out of a pickle. But again, another team that should be looking at players like Wharton or Sarr from Palace, Munoz. They could be looking, even at if they want to bring in a real 9, Voltemade to swap for an Igor Thiago, someone like that. I just don't think they've done it. But in my next spot, 13th, is a team that did very well last year, but I think sometimes we forget they were struggling. Leeds. This is Leeds. They brought in 2 great players in Trafford and Harry Wilson. They were in that relegation scrap until the last 6 weeks. But they rocketed up the league because of a couple of things. They, one, hit form, but all the teams they were playing and all the teams around them all dropped in form or kind of lost interest in the league because they weren't fighting for anything. And they kind of just jumped up. I don't know where they actually finished. It was around the kind of 14th, 15th mark, wasn't it? But I think we've over-indexed them. I think we're kind of going, oh yeah, they're comfortable. Whereas I think last year, most of us had them going back down. We probably thought they might sneak into it with 8 weeks to go. Whereas all of a sudden, I think we all naturally put him. I've got him in 13th. I've got him above Newcastle, Forest, Fulham, Crystal Palace. So I think even I might be over-indexing them. But they've got something. Again, similar to Forest and Sunderland and some other teams, they're just a big club. They can draw some players. And if they can stay another season in and kind of get that mid-table, I think they could bring in more players. I think they could get better. And I think they could stay here a long time. And it's nice that we've broken the curse of 3 teams up, 3 teams down, the same teams. And everyone's yo-yoing. And we've got Sunderland in this year. We got a Premier League that's got Hull, Ipswich, Coventry, Leeds, Sunderland. It's a nice mix of teams, and it wasn't that long ago that Brentford and Brighton and clawed their way into the Premier League, and 7-8 years later they're still here. So it can be done, and I think they've done a great job at it. And I just like what they've done in the summer. They haven't really lost anyone of note. Smart kept the manager. Again, one of these that isn't in transition. When you look at the teams below them in my league, Newcastle, Forest, Fulham, Palace, all new managers. Hull, Ipswich, Coventry, transitioning to the season. That's the first team that their managers, of the first 7 teams of the manager they had them last year. Next team is also a manager had them last year, and they've also kept their players, even with trying to compete with Chelsea for Xhaka. I've got Sunderland in 12th, and the reason I've got them a bit lower than what some people are is simply the dealing with Europe. I think once you add in a bit of Europe, you add in that first season excitement, all of a sudden teams do figure out how to play at the Stadium of Light and pick up results, because I think that's where they got a lot of their points was at home. When you're playing on a Thursday and then on a Tuesday, that was right. That was random. A Thursday and a Sunday at 2. All of a sudden, Granit Xhaka can't do that. It's not possible for him at his age. And all of a sudden, you go, okay, we've got to rely on these guys in one of them. And they start picking one of them, because I made a statement a couple of years ago that an English team will win the Conference League and the Europa League every single year now. So they have an ability to win something European. And I think that lure to them might be more important. Of course, they want to. I'm sure they've said, can we get into the top 6 again? Can we also bring in a trophy, whether it's domestic or European? But slowly that will become more apparent that, okay, we need to just concentrate on that and just make do. Let's not go down. Because I think if they came 16th this year, but won a European trophy, I think they'd be extremely happy. If they even won an FA Cup or a Carabao, I think they'd be extremely happy. So I just think adding that in is the first time where I think, they might have a little bit of a hurdle. In 11th spot, they've lost Jordan Henderson to Chelsea. Probably the move they made after they couldn't get Granit Xhaka is Brentford in 11th. Keith Andrews, and this is a team I did have in the bottom 3 last year. Probably a bit harsh, but again, they haven't strengthened. They haven't weakened. I think they were just a good team last year, and I don't think Jordan Henderson was the hugest part of it. I think they have good players, and I think they do good things. And that long throw is a problem for a lot of teams. The speeding up of throw-ins and stuff like that are definitely going to take a little edge off of them, because I think they're the team that, I know everyone thinks it's going to be Arsenal, but we've never scored from a long throw in, I think it's 4 or 5 years or something. They score a lot of their goals from them. And if all of a sudden the halfway line they send people up and the ref's going, all right, to the other side, they're not going to start sending their centre-backs up, because they're worried that if we go a little bit too long and he switches it to the other team, our centre-backs out of position. People are going to counter-attack them. So I think they're going to slow him down a little bit, which is a shame, because I love a team having kind of a way of winning. A little fly in the ointment. Something that when Arsenal's and Cities and Chelsea's and that just can't defend. That's what you want. Stoke did it. This is what's important. I think that's what I hate is, Arsenal are a really good club. They shouldn't be able to be good at set pieces because they've got other ways to beat us. It's like, well, no, if everyone could figure it all out, then do it. But if Brentford could be just a good standard team, but they have this unbelievable asset, do it. Spam it. Do as much as you can. So I think they will, but I think there will be some teething with the new rules. Next manager, this next team is 10th, so we're into the top half now. We've got Everton. I think this placement is completely dependent on where Njai ends up. If he stays, do they go back in for Grealish? It looks like they're not going to. But Njai and, Dewsbury Hall, Beto and Barry, I think they've got a steady defence And I think that manager as well in Moyes is, I think Everton fans don't enjoy watching it. It's the same thing that happened at West Ham. He got him a European trophy. He kept them safe and sound. But everyone's like, oh, the football's not fun. It's too defensive. And so Arteta is from the Moyes school playbook. That got into the ears of the owners. And I think they went, yeah, you're right. We should get a better manager that does more attacking football. Well, look where that put West Ham. And just as they brought in another manager that has a similar mindset to Moyes, he couldn't quite save it, but he nearly did in Nuno Santos. People get ahead of their stations, and I could see Everton, the fans booing because it's 0-0 again or 1-0 or whatever it is, and where are the good players? And be careful what you wish for, because Everton could sack their manager by Christmas, and they could end up in January losing a player like Njai, or this summer losing a player like Njai, and maybe a Drewsbury Hall. And all of a sudden, you've got in Marco Silva, who got sacked in his new job, and he's trying to recoup a season in the bottom three to just get out and survive it while playing expansive football. And the person you want at the helm when you're in that bit is a Nuno Santos, is a Moyes. It's that type of manager. So I think they're on a fine line. There's a couple sales, or the way in which the crowd react, that they could be 10th this year, or they genuinely could be relegated. So it's a big one. And Everton are a team as well that were definitely in a relegation battle last year and the year before. And they just kind of get out there early enough that you don't remember it. But there was, it wasn't long ago, 2 years ago, that we were thinking, oh my God, they're going to play in the Championship at the Hill Dickinson Stadium. But we've now I've been putting back-to-back teams with managers that have actually stayed for once. Leeds, Sunderland, Brentford, Everton, right in that middle pack. But in ninth, I've actually got Bournemouth. Bournemouth have moved on for Areola. Krupi is out. And if I said those two things, I think most of us think, yeah, they can't have the season they had last year. But I still really like their team. I really like their team. And unlike other teams, Brighton and Brentford and Bournemouth, the Bees, not the Bees, but the B alphabetically teams, they're very good at kind of redoing it. When Palace lose Ezra and Elisa and that, sometimes it takes a bit of time. Maybe Forest lose someone that it maybe takes a bit of time. Bournemouth usually have someone there. We didn't know who Krupi was really. Tavernier, Cliver. They've got Evan Nilsson was an unbelievable signing under the rest. That's a Newcastle signing, but they were mucking about in other areas, and I just don't know what they're thinking. But Bournemouth AFC is AFC Bournemouth. I got that the wrong way around, but they got Marco Rose now as their manager, I believe. Where was he last? 49-year-old German manager, Mainz. He was at Mainz last year. Interesting. And they start against Man City away. It's a huge start for him. I think if City played the way in which they played against Arsenal, I think there's a job to be done. Just want to see. It's weird because sometimes the friendlies don't have lineups, but the team they went with: Petrovic and goal, Trafford, Hill, Smith, TK, Alex Scott is still there. Cook, Cliver, Tavernier, Ryan, who's an unbelievable football player, and Evan Nilsson. Krupi still to come back into that group. On the bench, no one necessarily. That's the thing, is there's no one on the bench you go, oh yeah, he's coming in. Unal is a good forward. Yeah, I'm not smitten with their bench. So maybe I've over-indexed these guys in ninth, but I think they're just a smartly ran club with Michael B. Jordan at the helm. I think they're just a smart group, but they are in transition. New manager coming from potentially a generational manager. I think Bournemouth fans, that's their best season they've ever enjoyed. So it's a shame to get one good season, then you have to move on, but there'll be teething problems. We'll see. In eighth, this is the start of the kind of big 6-8, kind of the usual suspects, I would say. If you kind of followed along so far, you'll notice that the traditional quote-unquote big six are still to be played for, and I think the two teams left over, the order of this could be interesting. In eighth, I've got Aston Villa. Aston Villa, good manager, kept their manager. Arsenal are looking at Konza. I think Man United are looking at Watkins. These things might not happen. They were about to move on Martinez. They brought in a new keeper. Martinez was looking for 10 million euros flat fee, which just seems bizarre for potentially what a lot of people consider the best keeper in the world. I know it's age, I know it's contracts, I know it's whatever. Just seemed a bit odd to me, and I don't like moving on too many players at once, especially when you're about to join Europe. They haven't strengthened the squad. The squad doesn't look 5 players deeper to deal with European nights. But they've got an unbelievable rookie centre forward. Why am I forgetting his name? I've got his cards. I've gone early on his cards. The young lad, who I actually think might start the first game. I put Strike. And I wonder if this would be the reason they move on Ollie Watkins, because El Hilal in Saudi, it looked like it might have opened 65 million for Watkins. And I just don't get where these Saudi-based teams are not looking at Martinelli for 80 million. Young, world-class, all these kind of things. I just don't get where we're not ever talked about in this. But I'm just going to look quickly at their squad. If they move on Konja, I think they're in, a worry. They got Martinez, Bissot, Matty Cash is still there, Lindelof, Konza could be on the move, Mings, Pau Torres, Maatsen, Barkley, McGinn, Kamara back from injury will be huge for them. Buendia, Garnacho, Onana, Bagade, Leon Bailey, who could be off again, Manzambi. We got Watkins, Tammy Abraham, and they haven't even written him down. Who's the young? I'm gonna have to look up their last match because he scored loads. He's scored absolutely loads. 17-year-old Brian Maggio. They signed him from FC Metz for 10 million. They had a minor FIFA registration rules. He made his official debut and scored in the UEFA Super Cup against Paris last week. I think this guy starts the season. I think he's the breakout player of the year that isn't who I pick in a minute, but it was a toss-up between the two. He switched to England from Luxembourg, but he scored something like 6 in 4 games or something like that, including the Super Cup against the PSG team. He looks like a real find, and they did this with Johan Duran, and they moved him on to do with kind of other things. But if they move Watkins on, they have this young 17-year-old behind Tammy Abraham. I think that's exciting, but I also don't think it's exciting in the sense for a Villa fan that you're about to go into Europe and you need to compete in the top 4. And I think they'll really struggle. There's not enough signings there. I think an Ethan Waneri loan would really help them, because that 10 area, you're looking at Buendia and McGinn, Barkley, that group, Onana. I think you add a real spark like that behind a 17-year-old forward, I think they could become a really exciting team to watch for everyone. But I've got them in the bottom of this kind of 8-pack. 7th, I've got Hertzler's New Hairs Brighton. I assume he was wearing a stick on, but I don't think that's what you want to hear about. But he's had a transplant now, so do you know what I mean? We're going to enjoy watching that grow in throughout the year. We hope it grows in nicely for him. Or not, because I don't really like the guy. But Hertzler's Brighton, I've got them in 7th. They have lost Danny Welbeck, and that might not seem like a big deal, but I think there is something to it. The other part of Brighton is they're such a bizarrely well-ran team. I don't know what to even say about them. I just think they're going to come 7th. They're steady, they're good, they're quality, they're managed well. I don't know what else. I could put them 15th. I don't know, but I just feel strong about them being 7th. Next is 6th, and unfortunately I've got North London Rivals Spurs here. I don't want to put it down to money, but they're certainly going to be better than they were last year. And they came, was it 16th, 17th last year, 17th? This is a big jump. This is 11 spot difference. But when you moved on Jed Spence, so bizarre. But they've brought in players like Tonali, and I just think that midfield, I know a lot of people might disagree, but Maddison being back, Conor Gallagher, Tonali, you think surely they're going to figure this out. Kulevski, I don't know what's going on with Kulevski. I think he's a massive part of all this. But they're an odd squad. Even though they've spent a lot of money, I don't feel like, they're going to break into the top 3 here. I just think they're going to be better than they were last year. And they do have a new manager in De Zerbi. It doesn't count technically, but another transitional kind of area. Team that, new manager in the last 6 months, for sure. But I've got them in 6th, and I think the battle between them at the minute is them and Man United. Who's going to get in the top 4 out of the two of them? Even though both of them were relegation about 2 years ago, and Man United did a lot better last year. But I actually have Man United above them here, but only in 5th. not in the top 4. And they came third last year. They did very well at the end of the season with Carrick. I just don't think, and money's not everything, but they've underspent to Coventry and Ipswich. If the players aren't there, I understand not going for them. I totally agree, and I think it's a breath of fresh air. But I don't think they're in for the right players. I think Scholes said it. Tonali or Bruno Guimaraes, one of them would have changed their midfield. They turned their nose up at us offering Lewis Skelly, which I'm so glad, because I don't know why we're doing that. But they weren't bothered. They brought in Andres Santos. I think Luke Shaw needs cover still. They have the attack is the exciting part. Cunha, Sesko, and Buemo, I think, instantly make you kind of, and Bruno Fernandes behind that. I think we all kind of think, well, that's good. I think Santos, Bruno and Mainu in midfield will be a lot of fun. I think they could be quite leaky, because I think it's a little bit similar to Lewis Skelly, Bruno Guimaraes and Odegaard midfield for us. But I think ours beats them on a physical sense because of Bruno and some of Lewis Skelly's strength. But it does feel like that would be very vertical. And players like Sesko and Cunha and Buemo running in behind Ahmad, I think it's really good. I just think that back 5 isn't correct. It's still not correct. Nothing about it feels like they've improved it. They're not in for the players that you're seeing other players go for, like Van Heck, Ezri Kwanzaa from Leverkusen. There's certain players that are out there that I just think surely that would strengthen their team. And they're just not in for them. And I don't fully get that part. So I've got them 5th, dropping from last year. I don't know if Carrick will be the manager at the end. I really don't. Are they a team that genuinely can contend for the title? I do think so. But I've got them in 5th. I think all the top 5 here can all contend, depending on the way it goes. Man United now have Champions League. I don't think the squad's any bigger. They're going to struggle with that. Everyone's a bit older. You know, Maguire's and Martinez can't stay fit. Fernandes, you're going to start relying on someone like Euro and Heaven in situations you don't necessarily want 2 young players playing together, but they are. It's going to take a bit of time. Xerxes the backup to Sesko. It's fine. I think it's fine. But in 4th, breaking to the Champions League here, is Liverpool. I think they're going to be better than last year, simply because of Iriola. I've been pretty open at how much I think that the squad isn't good enough. It's not big enough. They've got very good players. If Barcola gets over the line, yeah, it does help. But they're moving on Gakpo. It's 1 in, 1 out. I think about 6 players short to compete on all fronts, or at least on one front. Because they do have Europe. They do have these things they got to kind of deal with. So I'd love to see Rio and Gamoa kind of take minutes. But if you bring in Barcola, there goes his minutes. That was kind of the part that I was excited about. I don't really get who's on the right, unless they move Rio. The forwards are good. Wirtz should be better, with a season under his belt. But I don't know. I think the 5 at the back is problematic for other teams. I think Arsenal, particularly, when you look at the teams below them, I think in the league last year, like Chelsea, Liverpool, but not Man United, but Chelsea, Liverpool, particularly those 2, could cause Arsenal problems because they're going 5 at the back. We are notoriously bad against that 3 at the back, wing back style of play. We don't really understand it for some reason, and they kind of get a bit stuffed up. For them being kind of actual title rivals, I think there could be some issues. I think at Anfield and at Stamford Bridge we might struggle, and the Stamford Bridge one's coming early. So time will tell on that. But Liverpool, I've talked about it a lot. I don't like the squad. I think there's problems there. There are a couple issues away from really struggling. But the manager could be just about good enough to make it work. In 3rd, I have City. I think most of us are naturally going Arsenal, City, kind of top 2. I've kind of broken the mould here a little bit. I'm going City 3rd, and am I being reactionary because of the Community Shield? Yes. But I think I just keep replaying it. Generational, not just generational manager for the club, generational manager for football. Maybe the best manager that's ever lived is left. The Ballon d'Or winning midfielder that sets the tone for you for the last 6 years and brought you Champions Leagues in 4 Premier Leagues. Gone. Bernardo Silva over the last 5-6 years, probably the most consistent player that just plays in every game. He's smart, he's composed, he's there, he's in and around everything. Gone. And you're left with these characters that in the Community Shield, that's the part, you can lose 3-0 in a pre-season trophy type thing. And I know I just called it pre-season trophy, it's a Super Cup. But in that moment when players are coming back, you can get beaten 3-0. It happens. It's happened to people before. It was the manner of it, I think, was worrying, was they were kind of working on bit moments. They kind of found a bit of room in the midfield. Foden would slide in. Haaland, going away from goal, he would snatch at it. You expect that from Morgan Gibbs-White sliding in Chris Wood away at the Etihad. You expect to see that. And it either goes in or he skies it. That was the kind of moments they had. You know, they eventually, the fullback got in and around on the overlap, pulled it back, Haaland straight at the keeper. Later on, when Arsenal kind of relaxed in, Semenyo had a nice shot, Rare saved. That was their 3 chances. But you'd expect Forest to have that many chances at the Etihad. And last year they did. They had 2, and they scored 2. And on any other day, both those 3 goals go in. But what we expect with City is they don't have those 3 chances and not much else. They have a lot of the ball. They have 10 chances. They score 3 of them. If they're going to work on in bit moments like that, they have the players to do it, because they are the... If they weren't going to have the ball, but they've got players like Cherki and Mamouche, but Mamouche might be moving on. Foden, Haaland, Doku, Semenyo. I mean, these are some of the best players in the league, if not the best attackers in the league. Eventually, if you keep getting moments and giving it to them, they will score a lot of them and they will win games. And they'll win a lot of games. But I think that style could be quite jarring for the fans. And I think the body language I didn't like. It didn't feel like a family. It didn't feel like when Bruno and Pep was usually on the field. After one of them, he would have been shouting at someone. He'd been talking to an Arsenal player. He'd been doing all sorts. There was nothing. It was just kind of like, we just took that. And it felt very similar to early in Arteta's reign, where we had a couple of players, big players that had moved on, a couple of players that needed to move on. We had to bring through some players. We weren't sure what to do. The body language was still off. He had to rebuild it. It took time. And if they were to win the league this year, it's understandable. It's Man City. Enzo Maresca's a really good manager. He worked under Pep. They've spent nearly $1 billion in the last 18 months or so. You'd expect that, but I'm not as impressed with it. And I wasn't impressed with that Community Shield, but not just for the result. It was the manner of it. It was the body language I didn't like, and that body language I could see getting a manager sacked. That kind of body language. So time will tell. I still put him in 3rd. I was tempted to put him in 2nd, but I'm going to go 3rd, and I've probably given away what's happening next, because in 2nd I do have Chelsea. I might be rose-tinted glasses here. They bought a lot of players. They've offloaded a lot of players. I have no clue what their team is at this point, because they've just bought so many players. But they've got a squad to compete in all comps. They definitely have that. They don't have Europe every 3 days. They have time, and they've got a manager who's a tactician, a world-class manager, a world-class player, who can set that team up to do things. If they lose Enzo Fernandez to City, I think that's painful. But they've also got Rodgers and Palmer and João Pedro and Neto, and they've done a lot of good. They've lost some good players. If they lose Enzo and they lose Cucurella, I feel like that is also similar to Rodri and Bernardo Silva. They're kind of mainstays. When you watch Chelsea, you expect to see Cucurella with his hair. You expect to see Enzo Fernandez in and around stuff. You remove them, you don't have the personalities necessarily that are going to be around the ref, talking to the ref, involved in everything. When a player gets pushed, they appear. Those two are those. Same for Rodri and Bernardo Silva. If you don't replace those players, you bring in good football players that are quiet and not necessarily those ones that pull in the other players, I think you can be in trouble. And so Chelsea, genuinely, I think a lot of people said this. They could be 2nd, they could be 1st, they could be 10th. I don't know. But the preparation time they have, the size of squad, the quality of manager they have to be 8. I think they're going to be 78% of their teams around them. But they are another team in transition. When you do look down this league, because I've got Arsenal in top, speaks for itself. It's the first time I've ever put Arsenal in top. I always go 2nd. After last year, I think we can go back to back, because when you look down the league, Chelsea, I'll kind of say the league table that I've just done, and I'll just add a little asterisk. 2nd, Chelsea, transition, manager. 3rd, City, transition, manager and players. Liverpool, 4th, manager, players. Their generational player in Salah's gone. 5th, Man United. Manager is last 6 months, haven't necessarily recruited. Spurs spent a lot of money, needs time to betting. New manager last 6 months, transition. Brighton, steady, but maybe lost their talisman. 8, Villa, losing a lot of players, have to fight on all fronts and not necessarily replacing their players. Bournemouth, transition, manager. 10, Everton, might lose 2 of their best players in Grealish and Njai and not necessarily replacing it. They brought in Brennan Johnson, good signing, but Don't know. Brentford, good. Nothing's really changed. Lost John Henson. Don't think it's a big problem. Steady. Sunderland, kept all their players. Steady, but they do have more games to worry about. Leeds, bought in good players. Steady manager. Should be good. Newcastle, transition manager. Lost a lot of players. Forest, transition manager. Fulham, transition manager. Coventry, transition to league. Ipswich, transition to league. Crystal Palace, transition manager. Hull, transition to league. It is a lot of transition, and that's the reason I've got Arsenal top. Is I don't think we're unbeatable. A lot of people kind of now going, "Oh, they're unbeatable. No one will touch a glove on them." You will. I think we're very good defensively, and when you get through that, Ray is unbelievable, and 3 Golden Gloves in a row. I think our attack's a little light. I do. I think when you look at City, better attack. Chelsea, better attack. On paper, this is. Liverpool, not so much. Man United, potentially better attack. Spurs, I'd say that's where it ends. I think everyone else, we're better. But as a unit, 7 years into the project, got it over the line. There's a family vibe. There's a comfortability. We're also being ruthless. Players like Bruno Guimaraes. We've got Hale Enders coming through and really putting kind of the electricity to it. And we're looking at big things. We're looking at winning multiple trophies this year. As far as Arsenal are concerned, I'd say a bad season is no trophies. A good season is winning the Premier League or more. If we were to come second and win a Carabao, I don't think that's great in this current transitional year. I think if we won the FA Cup and didn't win anything, still nothing. I think if we win the Champions League and come second to a Chelsea team that had 7 days to prepare and we ended up really doing well in Europe and winning it, I think that is fine. But for me, winning that league back-to-back is history. If you could win that league back-to-back with the Champions League, I think history makers, best team in Arsenal's history. And I think they have the ability to do it, especially when you look around Europe. Again, there's a lot of transition. To get to the other bits, I'm just going to add championship winner, West Ham. Going to go West Ham. I think it's going to be tight. I think Wolves are going to be good. Weren't great on the first day, but I'm going to go West Ham. Late goal, but I think West Ham championship winner. First sacked, I'm going to go Pierre Sage from Palace, and I kind of explain that with my picks. I think they will struggle. I think they'll be the most. I think they could even be bottom below the early flurry from the promoted teams. Crystal Palace could sack them, I think, by November. So I think Pierre Sage, flop player. This is going to be interesting. It's a hot take, and I felt quite comfortable at this for a long time. I don't want to say this player. Not because it's Arsenal, it's not Arsenal. Because it will definitely prove me wrong. And I think I'm adding a bad jinx or a juju into the air. Flop player is Anderson. I don't think he's £116 million. It was more so, he's a very good player. For England, I think he was really good. But I also thought England were very leaky and his job was to stop that leak. I think at City, his job is to stop that leak because they can't rely on Kovacic to do it. But the way in which he kind of put him out on the field in that right-hand side, I think that's not him at his best. And I think I've got a feeling that's where he'll leave him. Will he get assists and goals? Yes. Will he have games where everyone goes, oh, yeah. But I think at the end of the season, everyone will go, And I think people will, because he's English and he's Elliot Hansen, he's 23, I think people will go, yeah, but Man City are in a transition. And it'll be covered by that. But I think for me, he'll be the player that we're going, yeah, he wasn't worth that money. That could be the one. That's the one that I think is going to haunt me the most. Flop team, Man United. I think a lot of people think they're going to go from third to maybe second or first. I actually think they'll drop out the top 4. I don't know. There's no real reason. I just don't think it didn't look sustainable. It looked like a good run, a purple patch. But again, it's so painful to do these on podcasts because my word is embarrassing. Breakout player of the year. I really was looking at the player I mentioned a moment ago that I've completely now forgotten. Who was I talking about as the breakout player that I really liked? I don't know. I can't remember. I just mentioned there was 2 players and this is the other one. For me, it is Solis for Arsenal. I felt great about the signing based on stats and metrics alone. The preseason was unbelievable. Nothing to go by, really. Community Shield, unbelievable. It was Aston Villa centre forward, Majo. I'm basing these both off of, one's 24, one's 17. Both had great preseasons. I'm basing it on that. But Solis just looks problematic for teams because I think what we're used to is everyone just kind of floods to our right because that's if you stem Saka, you stem attack. If you stem Odegaard, you stem the attack. Don't think it's been years since we had that Xhaka Martinelli partnership over here. Bruno Guimaraes and Solis could be a problem. Calafiori could be a problem to teams, and I just think evening it out just means there'll be goals coming from everywhere. And I think attack is going to be more beneficial because of it. And it also, if that is the case, £34 million is going to be an unbelievable piece of business. If anyone's seen that clip of him running, or kind of shimmying, and before he got the ball, before he assisted Odegaard, the number, everything, it is Alexis Sanchez. It is eerie. I don't think he's Alexis Sanchez, but there is a lot of similarities, and that is quite exciting. Golden Glove, this is Arsenal heavy. I'm going to go rare. That'll be 4 times in a row. History made. I just don't, when I look around it, Chelsea maybe, but I just think they could concede. There's no team in there that I'm thinking, yeah, they're just not going to concede. And we're notoriously known as a good defence. I'm hoping it's us. But it's just, I'm going to be honest, the top 2 here are just easy kind of guesses. Going Raya and Golden Boot and going Haaland. I don't think City are going to have a great season. I think they could not get the ball to him enough for him to get the goals. He's just too good. I think you put him in any of these teams, he somehow becomes top goal scorer. I really do. I think he just finds the net. He's that good. If it's not him, I also couldn't find anyone else. João Pedro, unbelievable player, but I don't think he's going to get the goals. I don't think there's a winger out there at the minute like a Salah that could kind of still win it from out wide. I think it's going to be a centre forward. Sesko, Gyökeres, Havertz, none of them are making me go, yeah. I think Isaac or Etitike, I think Liverpool will score a lot of goals, so I think one of them could have a shot. But realistically, I don't know. I'd love it to be the Villa 17-year-old. That'd be unbelievable for England. It'd be unbelievable for the league. Unbelievable for sports cards. So I could see that. But I'm going to go the cheap route, and I'm going to go Haaland. That is your Premier League predictions. I've got Arsenal winning the league, Ipswich, Palace, and Hull going down. Time will tell. This is going to sit on my desk on the right hand side for the next 8-9 months. And I'm not going to look at it until the season's finished and we're going to go back through it all. But the next one to be done in, what's the date today? A couple of weeks' time. Here on the podcast, I will be doing my sell-buy list. And I'm looking at it right now quickly, and my word, it looks like it's going to be quite off. But it's just always fun to see where our heads are at. I've got a few people to kind of send their ideas in. I even had a World Cup winner in there or two. We'll get to that and do a little review of the transfer window, and also I'll review our transfer window, like what was good, what was bad, blah, blah, blah. But today was I think it's the funnest one this season, is to guess that Premier League before a ball is kicked. So excited for the new Premier League season. Hope you are too. Arsenal, first game is always fun at the Emirates. Champions against Coventry, it should be a fun game. They're quite open. We look in form after that City game, but we also are a team that could just be stagnant, especially against a low block. So it could be an interesting game. It's Friday night, Premier League season starting. Get your FPLs in, and Patreon will be out tomorrow evening, I would have thought, for the preview of that game. So please get the Patreon if you want extra audio in your ear rolls. For now, I'll leave you with that and enjoy the Premier League season. I'll enjoy Gunners Rest podcast. Bye-bye.